This is the Simpit. I'm your host, Sean Cole, and today we are checking out the Conspit. Have you heard of Conspit? This is another new company out of China making some mid to high-end sim racing gear, and I was really impressed with them. I saw, like out of the corner of my eye, I spied some cool stuff at their booth at Sim Expo this year from the footage from a mirror, and ever since then I've been wanting to try it out, and what do you know? Here it is. This is the H.AO. I'm not sure if that's how they want to call it. That's what I'm going to call it. The H.AO, the H.AO Hub and wheel rim options from Conspit. And this is, I'm not going to say this is a new design or a new concept. We've seen a hub design from like Fanatic. I use a hub design from Ricmotech on one of my wheels. So it is very common, but today we're also seeing a lot of purpose-built rims, wheels that are specifically built for formula racing or specifically built for any particular discipline versus the hub design where you have a central hub that'll have all the buttons, the paddle shifters, the quick release, and then the ability to mount any type of steering wheel to it. Their design allows you to put any 74mm quick release onto their wheel and use it on virtually any base. You could use it on a Moza, you could use it on a Sim Magic. If you got the wheel side of quick release, you could use it on a Fanatic, you could use it on a Mini Mite. The options are endless. The downside being, like many those other wheels not made by the manufacturers, you're looking at needing a wraparound USB cord because there will be no connectivity or communication between the wheel and the base. So the Conspit H.AO Hub is sold on its own for $482.50 or €523. And I do have to throw in a disclaimer here. None of that pricing was actually here in the United States. So with that Conspit being a newer company, a smaller company, their distribution is still new or a little on the light side. So I had to kind of guess by looking at some foreign sites and then kind of approximating. So these prices could vary in your region. So I just want to make sure you understand that. But we're looking at probably about $485 for the hub itself, plus the wheel rims on their own, which go for about $58 or €63, somewhere in that ballpark, giving you a grand total of about $600. So it's right in line with some other finished designs. And when I talk about its features, I think the money, it actually is a pretty decent bargain at $600 when you think about everything included in this wheel. So let's start off with the hub itself. And that starts off with it being a full carbon fiber body. So we're seeing a lot of interesting hybrid designs, carbon polymer type things. This is a real carbon fiber back shell, a real carbon fiber front plate, and real carbon fiber paddles on the paddle shifters as a starting point. So we are talking about very high-end materials when we're trying to justify that $600 price. In addition to that, we have these third triggers, we'll call them. They call them the Swift triggers. I'm going to talk a lot about these throughout the review, and this is something very unique. I'm not going to say the first ever. It almost reminds me of the rocker paddles because it goes front and back. It's a front and back click. It's just that it doesn't move the left-hand one. You have one on both sides, but they are independent. We'll talk about that more. But those are aluminum versus carbon fiber on the paddle shifters or on the secondary levers. Continuing from there, one of the other features, this wheel, believe it or not, has 48 mappable controls. That is about as many as I've ever seen or felt on a wheel, and it is amazing. You have 10 different buttons, and these are backlit buttons, and you would call them RGB, except for they only do 5 colors, which is still a mystery to me. I'm trying to figure that out, and I'm hoping that eventually we'll get all the RGB colors, but they are backlit buttons, and you have 10 of them, 8 of them being smaller, and then the top 2 being a little bit larger, and they all have a little bit of a ridge or a shield kind of semi-protecting them. The larger ones are fully protected, and we have about midway protection on the smaller buttons. Beyond that, we have these 2, both with gold aluminum tops or caps on them. And these are like the hat switches. You've got an up, down, left, right. You've got the twist left, twist right, and a push in function. You've got the purple encoders here, again with an aluminum cap. And you've got a real strong detent. We'll talk about that when we're driving with this thing. But very distinct differences between those. You also have the side mounted rotaries. A little harder to see, but you got one down here. You got another one up there, one down there, and then a top one over on this side as well. Again, aluminum anodized caps for those. So they have a very high quality look and feel to them. And again, you can see where it's starting to add up with the quality of the parts that they're making up this wheel from. Now, with that said, maybe the least expensive, I don't want to say cheapest, maybe the least expensive feature of the Conspit H.AO button box are these little paddles, these up and down rocker switches, or just switches. They go up and down, but if you look at them, they remind me of something out of like the 70s or 80s, the kind of switch you'd find at Radio Shack or do on a lot of DIY projects. And honestly, as functional as they are and as great as they feel, it doesn't really match the quality of the rest of the rim. So this is kind of a mystery to me that these kind of look so simple and basic, but they do add another 4 functions to each, the 48 total in the wheel. Another great feature of the H.AO button box or hub is this display. It's nearly 3 inches, it's full color, and there are 3 different layouts that you can actually change with this rotary knob down here. On top of that, literally on top of that, we've got the 9-digit rev strip, which is programmable, and we'll talk about what you can and can't do there in the software a little bit later in this review. Now, when I flip this over on the back, you can see I've already installed the adapter. So this aluminum adapter here on the back is from Conspit, and on top of that I have my NRG style quick release, so this makes it work on any of my NRG style quick release bases, and you can do the same thing. So whatever your manufacturer is, you put the wheel side, and it is a 74mm pattern, which is very common, and it's the exact same pattern that the wheel rims are. So all 3 wheel rims, they are uniquely drilled. So you've got the tri-pattern of the 74mm. You don't need all 6. The other 3 are going through from the back into that hub. And it is also drilled here to accommodate those up and down switches and the hat switches. All 3 of these are. Now, with it being 74mm, you could put any wheel rim you want on this hub. The only problem is the chances are that tri-spoke is going to cover up these and these. So you'd either have to drill them out like these are, or you can remove these. So part of the unique design of the H.AO Hub are these POHO pods, they're calling them, where you can actually remove these switches. They come out as all as one unit, and they just lock in magnetically if you need them or you don't. You'd lose some mappable controls, but it means you could use any wheel rim. You're not locked in on just these, and you don't have to absolutely drill the thing. So let's talk about the different wheel rims that they have. They are all kind of similar. You can see they all have that purple stitching on the inside. They are all made of microfiber leather, and I gotta be honest with you, so when I opened the box, I was like, oh, that's a nice feeling leather. And in my review, I actually wrote, oh, that's a nice feeling leather. But then in doing a little more research, I find out this is actually microfiber leather, which explains why it doesn't smell like leather. It feels like leather, but it doesn't smell. But it is very, very soft, and it also means that you'll be able to run without gloves and you're not going to mess up your wheel. So the 3 to choose from, you've got the CX295, the bullhorn rim, as I like to call it, for formula racing, and this is the most ergonomic of the 3. So you're really kind of locked into that 9 and 3 position. It just feels super comfortable right there, and anywhere else is a little more awkward a feel because it is built to keep your hands like that and real quick turning. From there, we get into the DX320. We've stepped up to 320 millimeters for this one, and you can see it's got rounded sides, flat top and bottom. It's got a slight ergonomic feel through this 9 and 3 position, so you're going to feel better in that. But if you're going to do something like rallying with it, you could put your hand up here and still feel good. Obviously, you can't do that with this one. And then finally, we have the RX320, which is also 320 millimeters wide, and it is perfectly round and the least ergonomic of the 3. Yeah, there's a little bit of a hint of an indentation for your thumbs here, a little pad here to kind of rest your thumbs up there, a flattened side like the others, so it feels good in your hands, but you can really grab this one anywhere, making it perfectly suitable for like rally racing or NASCAR racing. And again, you're looking at about $60 for all of these or any of these options. Now, the other thing I didn't mention is this H.AO Hub comes with some really cool stickers. These stickers are really high quality. You can just feel it. They have a thickness and a quality to them. And the other thing I love about these stickers is they actually have some sim racing commands. Like I have this one here with the exit on the button. So you got button stickers and stickers that can go on the backing plate as well. So a very, very complete design. Lots of cool features to these. And now I'm going to get it onto my rig so that we can start talking about how all this performs, all these features, all these mappable controls, how do they actually work on track. All right, well, I really wanted to get to the fun stuff. We'll talk about putting it together and changing rims and all that stuff later, but I really did want to just talk about the hub and its features and how it integrates with the steering wheel and how it really performs out on track. And I'm running the Bullhorn wheel rim. It is the smaller wheel rim, and you can see it doesn't go over the top. And what I really do like about it in this scenario is, especially for open wheel cars, obviously, is the visual clearance is great. I'm a shorter driver. I can look right over the top of this wheel, no problem at all, and it is really nice. I can see that rev strip across the top. It's bright and I can see it, but it's not like glaring and in my face, so it doesn't interfere with my ability to drive whatsoever. This is a smaller display. The information is a little bit limited because you can only use the 3 dashes that are supplied by Conspit. There's no integration with SimHub. Maybe we'll see that in the future. And I do like that I can change the displays, but again, you are just locked into the 3. It is bright, it is clear, and the other downside, of course, is I am an American, and this only reads in imperial, so we're talking kilometers per hour, bar for tire pressures, and liters for fuel. So you've got that, which I would love to see improved in the future. Now, when it comes to other aspects of the hub itself, let's start off with the enormous amounts of mappable controls. I think it was 48 on our count. It is a ton of controls. So when I talk about the buttons themselves, they are backlit, and a really unique feature is they turn off. The lights turn off when you press them, and I double checked with Conspit because that is irregular, but it is by design. So that is a choice they made, and I guess it's cool in that it confirms, you can visually see that the button was pressed because the light actually goes out. The buttons have a good tactile feel to them. The click, you can hear it. That's a strong click, and you can feel it, and you can even hear it over your headphones a little bit, and it definitely has a quality feel to that button click. The backlight colors right now, I have them in purple, but you can change them to a variety. You have 5 different colors to choose from on all of the buttons. I don't know, I guess you can't call it RGB when you don't have blue. Blue is not one of the colors available, and for some reason you just have the color combinations of purple, white, red, yellow, and green. The hat switches here, they're really light to the touch, so the movement on the up and down, left, right, it is very quick and easy to move. I do have to move my hand a little bit. That's another thing. For me and my hands on this little rim, I can get this button here real easy. I can get this top encoder real easy. I can get these center gold ones okay, but I kind of have to lift my palm off the wheel just slightly. And then anything on the lower half of the wheel, I definitely have to remove a hand from the wheel in order to engage them. Getting back to these gold switches, they're also encoder style, so there is a left and right, and they're a little light on the detent there as well. And then they're press in too, and the press in does have a good feel. You'll definitely know when you've pressed that in. Looking down to the purple encoders, love this purple color. And all the encoders, by the way, are aluminum caps. So whether you're talking about the black ones on the side mount, the gold ones for the hat switches, or even the purple ones, they're all anodized aluminum, which has a nice finish and a good feel to them. So these purple ones have a real substantial click. When you're moving them, you feel each detent. And if you wanted to go 3, you could go 1, 2, 3 like that, and you have that distinct click and feel for each one to make it really easy to be precise, which is nice. The side mounted ones, they go up and down, so to speak, and they have a good detent as well. Maybe not quite as strong as the purple ones, but they're a nice feature. I actually have these mapped to get through my menus, up and down in the menu, and to switch different screens, so that works out really nice for me. The one thing about these 4 side mounted encoders is the bottom right one actually changes the display, so I can actually go through the 3 different dashes available from Conspit on the fly right now. And then beyond that, we have these 2 switches in the front. All they do is up and down, which means even though they're center mounted, it's very easy to reach over. Now that covers everything on the front of the hub or button box or whatever you want to call it. Looking to the back side is where we have these really large paddle shifters. You can see they're large. They have a massaged side. So even though being plate style carbon fiber and fairly rigid, they're not sharp. They feel nice. I'm wearing gloves now, but I drove in bare hands and they're very smooth and feel comfortable on my hands. And they are a little thin. I've seen thicker paddle shifters for sure. Now with the aluminum arms that they're attached to, and they do move in and out, so you can adjust them outward for the wider rim if you like. They are very rigid, so when I pull on that shifter and even pull beyond, I feel a tiny bit of flex, but I'm putting way too much pressure considering I've already hit the stopping point. Now when I get up towards the top, they're definitely a little flexier. So if I was sitting up here on the top of the bull horns, or I was on the round rim and trying to really overpress, you will feel the flex. But again, why are you pulling so far beyond the stopping point, the limiter of the shifter itself? The lower paddles, now admittedly, I don't use these a lot. They could be used for a secondary clutch. They're a little on the floppy side. So when I talked about the stiffness of these shifters, these feel a little bit more, there's a little more play, and they're just a little floppy and kind of lightly sprung. But these secondaries are very long travel. So again, it would be great to have that kind of variability when it comes to using them for like a handbrake in rally racing. And then that takes us to the Swift triggers. And this is a unique feature that I've really only seen on this steering wheel. Maybe it's out there somewhere, but it's not very common. These extra triggers right here, these are both front and back. They're aluminum, and they do feel like an original old school shifter. So when you click them, you can actually feel a little tiny click and the resistance that puts it right back to center. And same thing when you're pushing forward, a little bit louder a click, and then it just comes right back. So it's sort of like a toggle, an up and down. And again, I find these are good also if you're not using those encoders, really good for going through the menus, like a forward and backward for the menu, because it's very intuitive, forward, backward. So again, really handy, and actually of all of the buttons on the wheel, these Swift triggers are actually the easiest thing to reach while driving without changing your grip on the steering wheel. So if I'm here at Bathurst just winding down the mountain and I got to be very precise, but I do want to press a button, I can press pull and it doesn't even affect me. It's just done with my index finger and it's very easy. I don't have to look. They're right where you think they are. They're super easy to find, and you don't have to search like you do for a button. You don't have to look down, and you don't have to pivot your hand at all. They're just right there and really nice. I already mentioned the rev strip. It is a 9-digit rev strip. It worked out of the box. I didn't have to do any kind of programming, and with their software, I can adjust the RPM ranges. So if I want it to light up sooner or later, I can make those adjustments, but there is no control of the color. And that's something else that I wonder, will we see software updates in the future, maybe giving us programmability to those LEDs? Because they definitely seem, or they definitely are multicolored. So perhaps I can get more out of that in the future. Seems like something you should be able to do. This kind of goes back to the dash a little bit. I have this button right here set to be my pit limiter. When you engage your pit limiter, you get a nice change in the display. So there's actually, I guess you'd call it a fourth dash for the pit limiter being on. You get the flashing lights on the rev stripe, and you get different information. So it confirms your gear, your speed, your RPM, and your brake bias when you're on pit lane or while you have the pit limiter engaged. And then when you press that button again, it goes right back to the regular dash. All right, now that we've covered the hub itself, let's talk about the CX295 wheel rim, which is one of 3 options that you have with the hub. Now, the wheel rim itself, I do like. It's got a good, comfortable feel. So here I am in that 9 and 3 position. We're in an open-wheeled car. We're not going to move our hands around a whole lot because this is the way we're going to drive this car. And the rim is rigid, so if I twist it, I'm not feeling much movement. If I try to go in and out, it's really strong as well. And at the same time, there's a little, I don't like overly ergonomic wheels where you're just so locked in that your hands almost feel like they don't come off. This has what I would call a medium amount of ergonomics. So it's got a nice comfortable spot here across the tri-spoke for my thumbs, and then it's got this really interesting bump right at the palm of your hand, which at first you notice because it's different from a lot of wheels I've driven, and then after driving it for a while, you notice that it actually gives you a little bit of added comfort and even a little bit of added grip on the wheel. So there is a shape to this whole section that is built to match the palm, and it does translate into a very comfortable wheel whether you're using gloves or in bare hands, and since it's a microfiber leather, you can get away with using your bare hands. Now, the only thing that I've really found that I didn't like that much about this is for some reason these bull horns are a little flexy. So now that's not where I traditionally put my hands. Sometimes I'll put them up there just to kind of rest. but ultimately I'm not going to try to do cornering or anything that takes any kind of precision from up there. So with that, it doesn't bother me as much as the fact that it just sort of is a testament to the fact that it's not a super duper expensive or super duper high quality rim comparing it to like a Sparco or a Momo, but it is a very affordable rim at the same time. And with that 295 millimeters from hand to hand and on the hub, I mean, I feel confident. This is a really good setup. I love this for an open wheel car like I'm running right now. And I have a lot of confidence for the quick turning of that car and this wheel rim to match, and it fits and suits the button box just fine. I mean, yes, I can hit most of these buttons easy, as I mentioned. So when comparing it to like a purpose-built open wheel where you're going to have maybe 5 or 6 buttons right within your finger range, this one is a little bit more like using a hub or an older style open wheel car where you are going to have to reach in just a little bit, but everything ultimately is within range and the comfort is really nice and the view and the look of it is a great looking package as well. The Conspit Hub arrived beautifully packaged, oozing style and quality right from the start. After laying out all the parts, I kicked off by choosing which of the asymmetrical paddles I wanted on the left or right, and then secured them down with the supplied hardware. Just 2 screws each. Next up were the large paddle shifters, also secured with 2 screws each, and you can actually adjust them in or out as needed before locking them down. Moving forward, I threaded the long USB cord through the adapter and plugged it into the back of the wheel. Then I attached the adapter to the wheel with 3 supplied bolts. My wheelbases all use NRG style quick releases, so I added my 74mm NRG wheel side of the quick release with 3 more bolts. The CX95 rim has a clearance for the pogo modules, but the gold tops don't fit through the holes, so I removed them and then placed the wheel onto the hub and secured it with 3 more bolts. Then I reinstalled the gold hat switch tops and the 2 nuts over the silver switches. Everything was super straightforward and all the necessary hardware was included. Now it's time to mount the wheel to the base, plug it into the computer, and watch it come to life. I installed the Conspit software, I let it update itself and the wheel's firmware. After calibrating all 4 paddles in the software, I discovered that the RPM lights are fixed in color, but I can adjust them in terms of when they light up, RPM-wise. And the dash offers just 3 on-the-fly options from Conspit. Now we're ready to race. Now we have the RX 320 wheel rim on the hub, so it is a completely different look and feel now. It's a much larger wheel coming in at 320 millimeters compared to the 295, that bowl-shaped formula rim, and it has a similar look. So we still have that microfiber leather and we have that purple stitching. Now we have that center stripe up top. And before we talk about the comfort of this wheel rim or compare it, I do want to point out one other thing. Look at this distance from the wheel to the end of the quick release, and it has been extended. I'm not saying this is too long. You'll find a lot of wheels with that distance, but when I compare it to the stock Moza, you can see that the quick release ends right here. The distance from the wheel to there is only that far, and the distance in this scenario is from here to here. So when I put it on my rig, it actually does push me back a little further. So if you're using this with a Moza wheel, for example, in this scenario, it is further back, and I actually had to make an adjustment for my rig, and if I went back to that wheel, it would actually put my wheel a little bit too far away for me. So it is a slightly different distance, a slightly longer distance, and one shared with many wheels where you add an adapter and a quick release. It's pretty common to those. Now this is the round rim. It's still a little bit ergonomic, not as much as that formula rim, a little bit of a flattened shape out here on the side, so when your hand's on it, you've got a good grip. There's a little bit of ergonomics, so when I wrap my thumb around the tri-spoke, it's very comfortable. And then you've got these little thumb pads as well, which add to, like, when you're running a long run, sometimes it's nice to just kind of straighten out your thumbs while you're driving and get a little rest. And since it's really a matter of the wheel difference, just the wheel rim itself, it's just sort of a matter of preference. I mean, the round rim is going to be really good for NASCAR and for GT cars or for your slower formula cars even. And then as things get faster, you might find that this wheel is just a little bit large for some of those scenarios. But with this being 320 millimeters, obviously those buttons that we talked about, the distance on the formula rim, the formula rim is 295 millimeters. We're now at 320 millimeters, so 25 millimeters wider, which extends that distance. So when I'm reaching for this microphone button, it's just a little bit further away, and that's the button that was really easy to press on the formula rim. Same thing with all the buttons. They're just a little bit further away with this increased distance on the wheel, but certainly manageable. With the paddle shifters, they can be pushed outward, but I didn't even need them. I was really comfortable with this. I didn't even have to make them wider, but I could if I wanted to, and I can definitely reach those internal swift triggers with no problem whatsoever. They're really easy to grab. Now, in most scenarios where you're using a hub style design, the wheel rim does come off, and you might have multiple wheel rims to choose from like we do from Conspit, but it does require a little bit of work, and it's not the kind of activity that I would do all the time. So while I might put this on for a season, it might be a full season before I actually change out wheel rims, and that's why you see a lot of drivers actually have multiple wheels. Now, in this case, you can do a change on the fly. It can be done. We can just switch from this wheel rim to this wheel rim, but it does take a little bit of work, and it takes 3 tools. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick change from the round to the flat bottom wheel, and we're going to get an idea exactly how long it would take if you wanted to do it on the daily. It starts by taking off these 2 little nuts over the little switches. It's an 8 millimeter wrench there. The gold hat switches, so we are going to have to take those off. Same thing if we were going to the formula rim. On and off with the round rim, you'll see that I can actually remove the wheel without taking off those gold ones. And now I can take that wheel rim off and put it over here. Now again, this is not going to fit over the gold hat switches. We could remove these pogos if we didn't want to, or we were just going to cover them up. We're leaving them on there. But it does mean that we have to remove these encoders, or the tops to these hat switches. So there's one, and our second one right here. And now we can go back on with our different wheel rims. So you're going to see it's going to clear those 2 switches. And then we'll get this all bolted back together again. And then we'll give these all a quick torque so that it doesn't come loose on us while we're driving. And just like that. So that's about how long it takes. It only takes a few minutes, so it's not impossible. Maybe not something I want to do every single day, but maybe if it's a few days apart, it wouldn't be too much trouble. And it would save you a lot of money being able to go to the formula rim or the round rim or this rim, depending on your needs. And if it only takes a few minutes, that's a lot cheaper than buying another $600 or $700 wheel rim. So just like that, we're up and running on the flat bottom wheel. Now with the change, the only real difference is the wheel rim itself, and this one is still 320 millimeters, so everything we talked about with the round wheel and the distances from the grip or 9 and 3 positions to the buttons and other controls is really identical. Maybe these top rotaries are a little bit more trapped or hard to get to because it's a little bit tighter, but I can still operate them both just fine. So another thing I really didn't talk about with the wheel is the stickers. It does come with stickers, and it comes with stickers the shape of the buttons. So I put a few here, one for my pit limiter, one for chat, and one for exit or tow out of the vehicle. And it obviously makes it very easy to remember. So if the RGB, or I should say the 5 colors, don't help you in identifying it, or the different shapes of all the different inputs isn't enough to remind you, the stickers will definitely put it over the top. Now this wheel rim I actually like. It's got a little bit more ergonomics than the round wheel, but not quite as much as the formula rim. So I don't feel like I'm glued into that 9 and 3 position, but it does have a really good, comfortable grip here. And you've got that additional like perforated leather versus smooth leather that makes this rim unique compared to the other 2 as well. Both of the round rims, this one and the full round, are very stiff, very strong. So, I mean, I'm giving it as much strength with my grip test as I can. And you can see there's a teeny tiny bit of flex with an aluminum spoke you would expect, but certainly not more than, you're never going to feel that at all. It's not going to happen during racing. It's only going to happen when you give it a torture test. So the overall comfort of the wheel rim is real good. And I think to an extent, if I could only have one, so if I'm going to be doing wheel swaps, that's one thing. Or if I'm going to have multiple wheels, that's one thing. But if I could only have one wheel rim on this hub, this might be the one that I go for. And the main reason being, at 320 millimeters wide, I can drive just about anything. It's wide enough to NASCAR drive, even though it's not full round, or rally race. And I do have the top, so even though it's flat, if I am in a rally and I need to grab somewhere else on the wheel, it's at least available to me. Maybe not quite as easy as the round wheel, but I can drive a lot of the faster cars, and because of this like semi-formula feel to it, it feels like it can turn quick enough to handle a lot of those cars. And maybe if I was doing high-speed formula cars, I'd feel the need to drop down to a 295, but certainly for like GT3 cars or even the slower formula cars, this feels perfectly natural and at home in those rides. You know, at this point of the review, I honestly hope that you've already started to formulate your own, the good, the not so good, and the bottom line, because that means that I've done my job well. And I pointed out and talked about all the elements or features of any product by this point in the review. But you know, I always like to recap things, and the best way to do that is to break it down with the good, the not so good, and the bottom line, starting off with the good, and that being, it's a great looking combination. I love the purple and black look. I think it's a great color scheme, so it really works for me. I know Amir would love it as well because it's his colors on his cars that he races already, so it's almost built for Amir. But I do know that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Some people are going to think this is beautiful. Some people are going to think it's atrocious. So different strokes for different folks. I think it really comes down to what you think is great. Another great feature or another thing on the good list is tons of mappable controls. Variety of control types. Super cool swift triggers. Real carbon fiber all throughout. Backlit buttons, programmable. Really nice stickers for the wheel with some sim commands even. Extra long USB cable. Use any 74mm wheel. Comfortable and nicely made affordable wheel rims from Conspit. And now on to the not so good. All right, so I gave them credit for the extra long USB cable. That's awesome. However, it is still a wraparound cable. It isn't wireless communication, so when you spin that wheel all the way around, the cable's going all the way around. But that's also very common with a lot of add-on wheels in the industry, so it's not really a flaw of this. It's just part of using an independent wheel manufacturer's wheel rim, and again, at least it's extra long. Beyond that, in the not so good list, we have that there are only 5 colors on the backlit buttons, and that is a what's up with that to me. Primitive software. Perhaps color controls and other features will be added later. Buttons end up being kind of far on a 320mm wheel. Only 3 display options. Hopefully SimHub integration or more from Conspit later. Display only uses imperial. Kilometers per hour, bar for tire pressures, liters for fuel. And now on to the bottom line. Conspit is a new company when you really think about it, and even if you look back to the early days of Fanatic and Thrustmaster, there was a growing curve or a learning curve for them getting into the industry, getting their products out to the masses, hearing from the masses to make simple adjustments later, like maybe bringing miles per hour or other RGB colors to the backlit buttons. And I think a lot of the things that we might demand of this wheel could actually be done without even going to a version 2. It can probably be done with programming alone, and as soon as more sim racers get their hands on it, start giving them feedback, they'll start making those changes. But what I love about the H.AO Hub and these wheel rims is right out of the gates, it shows a real eye for quality. This is a nicely made wheel. I have very little complaints with the construction of this wheel. I love some of the features. I love the quality of the construction and what the materials are. And other than these little up-down switches, everything feels extremely high-end. So when I look at that overall $600 price, I feel it's right in line with its competition. It's just a matter of, is this the eye? Is this the appeal? Is this the color scheme you love? love. I mean, if you're really into a different color scheme, this is not the wheel for you. It is a very distinct look that I think is going to hit a big home run for a lot of sim racers out there, and might have other racers saying, yeah, but I lean more to those green and yellow or some other combo. I'm not trying to tell you. Some people like pineapple on their pizza, some people don't. I'm not saying which is right or wrong. I'm just saying it comes down to what is best for you, and this with its distinct look is definitely going to hit home for some. So overall, when I look at the not so good list, I mean, most of the items on there I think are things that will be cured fairly quickly in the process, because most of it can be done through software. So these are the kind of changes I think will be done. And then you're looking at, for $600 with a wheel rim, a wheel that compares to some wheels that could be double its value. When you're looking at wheels that don't have communications, you could be looking at some very pricey companies, because those are the most expensive wheels in our industry at this point. The ones that are made practically to be real race car wheels that just happen to work for sim racing. And I think this falls right into that category. I also love that they think ahead, or thought ahead with the design, knowing that you might want to put a Momo wheel and maybe you can't precision drill for those 4 holes to place it, and being able to just remove those POHO pods makes it really easy to do anything you want with the wheel hub on its own, and then being able to pop them in and have 48 mappable controls in a steering wheel. It pretty much means that you're not going to need a button box. You label them so you can remember. 48, I can't remember what everything does. I'm going to have to put these labels to good use to get the most out of all the features of this wheel rim. So I hope you've enjoyed the review. I hope you've enjoyed our introduction to Conspit, another new company on the sim racing market or horizon, and that is just the best thing in the world for us sim racers, having so much variety, having so many options that we can actually be so selective or greedy that the color scheme would be the reason we pick one quality wheel over another quality wheel. It's not just about good wheels, it's about having a variety, a selection, reasons like 3 wheel rims. I mean, it only took me a couple minutes to change. I always said I would never change on a wheel hub between races, only between seasons. At 2 or 3 minutes to get it done, I kind of have to rethink that. I actually literally could go from this round wheel to this formula wheel in a matter of minutes and switch from rally to formula on the same wheelbase. That could even be a money saver right there. And with $60 wheel rims, you're not even breaking the bank. And of course, if you want nicer ones, I think the hub itself, with the quality of the carbon fiber and the aluminum capped pieces, that it's good enough quality to justify a much more expensive wheel rim. So again, I hope you've enjoyed the review. I hope you've enjoyed seeing Conspit. This might have been your first sighting of them. They also make a set of pedals, they make sim rigs, and I think we're going to see a lot more from them in the future. Be sure to give this one a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you'll find out when our next video comes out, and thank you for watching. This is the Simpit. I'm Sean Cole, and I'll see you on the track.